Hi, everybody. Welcome to this month's Get Real with Morton. And today we're going to be talking about quite a controversial area. I'm joined here by my trusty colleague, Mrs. Betty Drennan, who's head of our property management business. And we're going to be speaking about the changes to the new tenant law. So we wanted to review these changes with you all so you can understand what's happening, and also, you know, they're not as bad as we thought. One of the big ones that I must say is an interesting one is all about the pets.
The interesting thing is that assistant animals, such as dogs, etc., a landlord cannot prohibit a tenant from having an animal in the property. This is part of the law that they can't say no, that the assistant animal is part of their need, the tenant's need to actually move around, and so they can't say no to that. They can say no to pets, but they need, again, valid reasons. So some of the valid reasons are that the property is too small for the animal. And fair enough. Which
is actually that because that's generally always been the problem. Someone gets a Doberman in a one-bedroom flat.
Yes. So they can say no to that. They can say no to the fact that the strata building bylaws actually have strict bylaws.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And that the bylaws actually say no to pets. So
that's very interesting. But if I could just question that, because in a strata environment, they can't, as I understood it, they can't, what's the word? You know, they
prohibit.
Well, they've got to have, again, a good reason to prohibit it. They just can't do a blanket. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
They do need a good reason to say no. But with there's special, like some of the company title properties in particular as well, where they have special bylaws. It's just not the standard bylaws that are set out. They have actually special bylaws, and they've drafted those bylaws specifically for these reasons. So they can't. They've got to take those into account.
Okay. So there is some protection then.
Look, absolutely there is. But look, again, a landlord should be considering these different things. They can actually, they can't, I was going to say, they can't actually put an extra bond for pets. No. They can't do that. They can't have a security reason or a increase in rent. They can't do that. If they say yes to a pet, it's yes.
Okay.
The other really, before we move on to this one, the other really important matter is on the pets is a tenant needs to apply for a pet, right? And they fill out a specific form. If the agent or the landlord does not get back to them in 21 days, it is deemed that the pet is allowed.
Right.
Really interesting because, you know, they give you 21 days only. If you don't respond, then it's deemed as approved.
Right.
So again, a landlord, an agent needs to be on top of that to make sure that everyone is covered. So
one of the other ones, it's actually now in the legislation, but it actually has been in effect for some time.
It has.
Is you can only increase the rent once a year.
Yep. It has been in the legislation prior, but with this amendment, they've made it much more clearer. There was a bit of a grey area last time when they said you can only increase the rent every 12 months. And the grey area was if you took on a 6-month lease, you could actually increase it after that 6-month lease. But now they're saying in every 12-month period, whether there's a lease or there isn't a lease, you can't increase the rent. So it made it much more clear.
And I think it is worth commenting because one of the things that we always used to do or into it, every time the lease comes to an end, you just want to keep that rent edging up.
Yes.
So what this really means, so initially we were like, we're not into this, but now what we just realised is you just need to be forward thinking in your planning.
Absolutely.
And making sure that when that rent increase period is coming up, that we're on top of it and making sure we're getting the biggest increase that we can.
Yeah, the biggest increase that we can. The rent is at market value. You know, you might have a fabulous tenant there that you think, well, actually, no, I'd rather have a smaller increase or whatever it is. But we're there to actually make sure that that's done.
It is one of those things I have to say, like, because obviously as agents we do represent landlords, and we look after their interests, and obviously we need to look after tenants too, because a great tenant looks after your property.
Yeah.
But I did strike me that with that one increase, like when you're doing a series of little small increases all the time, everyone gets through that bit.
Yes.
Whereas it's like taking the small increases, putting them into one, and then actually adding more because the landlord's conscious that they've only got one chance at this. So I must say, I do question whether the effectiveness of that piece of legislation, how that turns out in the end.
Yeah, I think it will turn out actually quite well because, yes, you're increasing it dramatically, whether it's 10%, 5% or 10% or whatever it is, but a tenant actually understands it's not going to be increased again in 12 months.
True.
So they accept it.
Yep.
They think, okay, that's not bad. It's 12 months. I'll pay that. And
Definitely.
I'll stay on.
Another
So
way to
there's
look at it.
Two ways of looking at that.
No, good. I also think probably too what a lot of people need to understand is that people are staying in rental properties longer.
Yes.
I remember when I started the business, I would bank on 70% of our properties would change tenant every year. So people were a lot more mobile, whereas with the affordability problem, the rental crisis that we've got, people are tending to stay, or they're either choosing to rent for financial reasons, or they're tending to stay somewhere for a long time. So therefore, they're viewing their rental property as their home.
They are.
And
Absolutely.
that actually, even though there's probably more rules and more certainty there for tenants, I think it's actually a good thing for landlords because that's what you want, is somebody who wants to treat your property as their home.
Absolutely. When you've got an investment property, you want someone to be looking after the property for you. You want them to be loving it as you love it.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and I suppose we've been doing this for a long time, haven't we, Mrs. Drennan?
Yes, we have.
Mrs. Drennan's been doing it for longer than I have, or probably maybe the same, I don't know.
So-
But we also know that the key to successful property management from a landlord and a tenant point of view is actually everybody staying calm, everybody being reasonable, and everybody following common sense. And if you get that, landlord and tenant, everybody jogs along quite nicely together. So I suppose that's our main message to landlords. Don't panic.
No,
Like we have had feedback from
okay.
people like they want to get out. It's like, actually don't.
No.
Just settle down. We can manage all these things.
Yeah.
I think for tenants, they can, I think for tenants it's good. More respect, which I think they deserve.
Yeah.
And we'll move forward from there. So
Absolutely.
thank you very much, Mrs. Drennan,
It's my
for
pleasure.
joining me.
My pleasure,
Yeah.
as always.
in Get Real with Morton. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next month.